Good afternoon. I'm Lieutenant General Mike Farrer, and I'm a paratrooper, and I am going to stand on this chair, and if I fall, I'm going to do a parachute landing fall. Now, Don, sitting next to me, is a paratrooper, and he said if I go over the edge and out the door, he's following me off the stage. Huh? Well, it's a great day to be a veteran. It's a great day to be in the city of Columbus. It's a great day for us to celebrate D-Day, the 75th anniversary. And how amazing, as you walked into any of the entrances, it said, "This way to the D-Day celebration." So yes, we are the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, and the memorial side of us will honor those who have served and passed. The museum side of us will tell the story, but this is a day to celebrate such a magnificent day in the history of the United States, and frankly, as we've heard all day long and all week, the history of the world. Is the building shaking, or is that me? You know, we're a storytelling museum, and let's do a show of hands. If you've walked through this museum already at least once, raise your hand. Okay, put them down. If you've not yet walked through this museum, raise your hand. You can't raise it twice, okay? Great, all right? So really, I invite you to find the time today, following this amazing and outstanding program that we have put together, to walk through the museum and experience this. And if your time is tight today, then I invite you to come back. It is in fact free for all of our veterans. It is in fact free for our active duty. And through the super efforts and the super successes that we're having within the city and within the region and nationally, we'll get to a place where it'll be free for veterans and their spouses and families, and active duty and their spouses, and who knows, maybe someday for our kids that come in here. So we're a startup, and I like to say every day is a new day. So this is the first June 6th in the history of the National Veterans Memorial Museum. So the stories that we're about to hear really talk about that pivotal time in history. And we will hear from three amazing soldiers and sailors who will tell their stories as well. And I'll introduce them in just a second. Before we go much further, let's roll a little video to get us going. And spontaneous applause erupted. You know, we started October 27th here. We had a fantastic grand opening, and first couple months we would talk about visitors coming. And then someone said, do visitors come to your home or do guests come to your home? And so you're all guests in our home today, and I'm so very delighted that you've joined us. I want to recognize a few of our guests and then say a word or two. From the office of U.S. Senator Rob Portman, we have Michael Dustin, who is the Director of Constituent Services and Military and Veterans Outreach. Michael, are you here? Raise your hand. Stand up. In the back over there. Thank you, Mike. I told him to sit up front. So, but thanks for being here. From U.S. Congressman Bill Johnson's office, Ashley Carlin. Are you here? Yep, she's with Michael back there. The former First Lady, Karen Kasich, is right here. Thank you. Laura Lanese, Ohio Representative from District 23. Can you hear me? Thanks. Laura Lanese. Yeah. It's now an honor to introduce the people that you really came to see. Beginning with Colonel Pete Mansour, U.S. Army retired, the General Raymond E. Mason, Jr., Chair of Military History at the Ohio State University. And today, Pete will be moderating this panel. Pete is one of the veterans featured throughout the narrative of the museum. And Pete and I had the privilege of serving in Iraq together. Big round of applause for Pete. And our World War II veterans who are on stage, Don Jakeway, Staff Sergeant, U.S. Army, and one of the original members of the 82nd Airborne Division. I've been told by Don that he parachuted into Normandy 30 minutes before midnight before the clock turned on June 6, 1944. So he wears on his hat a spearhead emblem as well as, I think, 2 jump stars, correct? Yes. Also on stage is Jack Walsh. Jack served as storekeeper 3rd class in U.S. Coast Guard from 1944 to 1946. He served on the USS Muir and the USS Richardson in the European theater. Big round of applause for Jack. And we have Carl Strout, Navy Hospital Corpsman, Medic 2nd class, stationed in the Pacific. A big round of applause for Carl. You can see that we have limited space on the stage, thus I'm standing on a chair. But we wish that every World War II veteran who's in the house today would have the chance to be on this stage, and these 3 will represent you. But please raise your hand or stand if you may, if you're a veteran of World War II. These men are, and they represent, our nation's greatest generation, don't they? Are there any Gold Star family members in our audience? If you would raise your hand or stand so that we can honor you as well. Any Gold Star family members? Let's give a hand to all of those. I'm really happy that you're here. I'm really thrilled that this is such a wonderful program put together by our staff and this community. And it's my great honor to introduce my friend, colleague and fellow warrior, Pete Mansour.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Okay, well, welcome. And I will do a minimum of talking because I know you didn't come here to listen to me. You came here to listen to these three veterans of World War II. But let me just say a bit about the significance of D-Day, because I've been asked this question many times in my role as the General Raymond Mason Chair of Military History at Ohio State. Why does D-Day matter so much? So I think what you have to do is a little bit of counterfactual history and look at the world as it would be today if D-Day had not succeeded. So had the Germans actually repulsed us at the water's edge there, it would have been unlikely that another invasion would have been attempted in 1944. Just too many moving parts, too hard to do. And in a world like that, it was likely that the Red Army, the Soviet Red Army, would have overrun all of Germany to end the war. Or the war would have ended with an atomic bomb being dropped on Berlin. And in either case, the world we live in today would have been vastly different than the one we inhabit. So that's why D-Day matters in the grand scheme of history. That's why these gentlemen on stage fought as they did to make sure that the freedoms we enjoy today and the world we live in today is one that we can be proud of and our children can be proud of. So enough of that. Let's talk about their experiences, and we'll begin with you, Don. You and I were on NPR together yesterday talking about the invasion. I've heard your story. It's fabulous, but why don't you begin by talking a little bit about where you grew up and how you came to enlist in the Army.
Well, to begin with, it was kind of a dare. Secondly, it was because if you became a paratrooper, you got $50 more a month than the normal infantry. Now, I lived in a family of 8 of us, and my dad worked for $1 a day. So when it's a long story as I go through this thing, but I played football for Johnstown, and Croton was a rival, and at that school, there was a guy named Paul Potter. Now, they won the championship that year, but we beat them. But every time we'd meet in the ice cream parlor, we'd argue about who had the best team and what. Now, to make things even worse, I was awarded the Outstanding Backfield Player in 1941, and it made Paul upset because he was good. So one day he came into the parlor and he said, "Okay, tough guy, I got 2 applications to the paratroopers." As far as I know, they were sanitary work. I didn't know what a paratrooper was. And he says, "How about joining?" I said, "Sure." I think if I'd have thought about it now that I know, I might have been hesitant, but I'm proud of the fact that I became part of the 82nd Airborne Division the year they were organized, 1942. The 82nd Airborne Division was in North Africa, Sicily, and Italy. And God bless the 101st was with us in Normandy, Holland, and Belgium and Germany. Now, when I got enlisted into that service, you couldn't be more than 6'2". You could not be married. You couldn't wear glasses. You couldn't be colorblind. A lot of special things. And I can show you in the record books, it took 2,400 recruits to make 130 paratroopers back then. Omar Bradley was a general in charge of organizing a new division in Camp Claiborne, Louisiana. General Browning from England came over here and convinced them, instead of going to a mechanical type of a division, go to an airborne division. And that's how we were formed. We're the granddaddy of American Airborne. We were formed in early 1942. After that, the 101st, bless their heart, good people. They came in into Normandy with us and Holland in the Battle of the Bulge into Germany. So anyway, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but
Well, what was your training like? Talk about,
listen, I know there's a lot of veterans in this group. God bless you. Thank you for your service. So I'm not going to tell you how hard it was or how difficult it was, but I can give you the paratrooper training that we took back then was unbelievable. We had to begin with, we take 20-mile force marches about 3 times a week. We did odds and ends, and most of you know what basic training was like. And when I go and talk, is tell the people we were taught to kill, how to use mortars, machine guns, rifles, hand grenades. And it's hard for an old farm kid that just used to just hunt rabbits to come in there and be taught the way they taught us. I can tell you a little story real quick. When I made my 5 qualifying jumps at Fort Benning, we were supposed to get a furlough home, and I refused to take the furlough, and I went to a demolition school. I learned to work with high explosives and things. Also went to compass reading, and then went to airplane identity, anything I could learn to help me get through the war. Well, during that time, we trained in Okefenokee swamps. Now, you know what the Okefenokee swamps were. So the first assignment I had was take a compass, Lenzetti compass, and take a patrol, go through, find this place in the swamp. Now, you'd be going along, and you're crawling over a log, and swim away. And I'll tell you what, no leader got his squad out of that water any quicker than I did. But those are the kind of things, I've come face to face with cottonmouth snakes, and bugs, mosquitoes and things. But just to make a highlight of that story, we're in the swamp there one day, and I was taking my squad, we were moving up, we were supposed to capture this building sitting out in the middle of the swamp. And I'm crawling along, I'm moving my men up. The only ones I looked up, and just out of strike range was a cottonmouth snake. Look at me, right in my face, big mouth wide open, and I didn't like snakes. I jumped up. I didn't want the guys to know I was scared of a snake, so I jumped up and I hollered, "Charge!" We took off for this little house. I mean, I'm sorry to tell this story, but I thought it was kind of funny. But we charged for this house. When we got there, that captain came out and says, "Sarge, you just got all your men killed. Now you got to get inside this house, and that's where you sit the rest of the day." The next day, them guys come up, put their arms around, "Way to go, Sarge." So I enjoyed that. Oh, I got millions and millions of stories, guys.
so you eventually deployed to England. Do you have any memories of the English people or?
Oh,
or
I'll tell you what. Yes, I do. I was the type of a guy, born and raised a little old farm. Things were tough, lived through the Depression. And when we got to England, we were in a place called Woollerton Park, and had about a 6 or 7 foot brick wall around this whole encampment. And instead of my going into town, in fact, when I got my pay, I sent it home, because I figured my parents needed it more than I did. I sent most of it home. I did keep some. But in this encampment and stuff like that, I'd get on a bicycle and ride the countryside. And I'll never will forget, I'm riding down this road, and there was this big lilac bush. And I got off, went over, and I broke off a piece of this lilac, and I heard this, "I say there, Yank, what do you think you're doing?" I said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I got one of these like in my yard at home, and I was tempted. I like the smell of it." She says, "Oh, a Yank, well, once you come on in," we had tea and crumpets, and I sat there and talked with her for about an hour. So they were first over there. It was a little difficult. But after a while, the British people were awesome. They treated us they treated us real well. We can't complain. I can't complain. I never had any problems with the English. But then again, I didn't go to the pubs and things like that either. So if you want to fight, go to the pub. You know what the American GI would do? They'd go into these pubs when they first got there, and they'd drink the beer dry in an hour. It's gone. Well, sitting back on the bar was individuals' own stock, sitting there. Belonged to this guy, belonged to this guy. Well, they bailed over the counter and took and drank up all that all that stuff. So we were blacklisted from the pubs for a while. Anyhow,
Typical paratrooper.
don't let me get wandering off too much because I'd ad-lib and talk too much maybe.
So obviously you knew that an invasion was going to be coming. What were your emotions leading up to
My whole
D-Day?
point about this thing is I was trained thinking we were going to Japan, to the Pacific. Now, my wife told me this. She said, "Don, you're not going to sing that song, are you?" And I said, "Well, why not?" She said, "Well, you sound like Frank Sinatra's brother, not so hot, you know." so anyhow, when we got our training and in the swamps and things over there, we're thinking going to the Pacific, and I sat in a swamp there one night. We put our little shelter house together, and I sat in there, and I'm a nervous type of guy that has to be doing something all the time. I lit a candle, and I wrote 2 verses to a song. It's been years and years ago. So I'm going to sing it to you, but I'm not a singer. You have my permission to leave, do this, whatever, okay? And it goes like this. Far across the Pacific to the island of Japan, we got a score to settle, and the time is now at hand. We're going to send the paratroop to sail across the sea to make this country safe for those who love democracy. Hear the airplane motors humming, hear the angry bullets whine. We're going to send the paratroop to slaughter all the swine. They'll know their days are numbered when the paratroops round them fall. We'll send this message to them with the troopers from McCall. It took me all night to write that. Yeah. You see, I have the utmost respect for every veteran, no matter when it is. And I don't want to let people think that I'm telling my story. I'm telling it as I saw it, as I saw it with my eyes. I don't mean to offend nobody. And without all this together, we'd not be here, that's for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get to the Pacific in a second, but we're in Europe now, and you get the word that it's time to load up your aircraft. What are your emotions?
In Nottingham, England, we did practice jumps, getting prepared to go in, but they still didn't tell us where. And so one day, General Ridgway called the division together, and he got up and he says, "Gentlemen, I'm telling you we're having a practice jump tomorrow. Now, anybody in this group that does not want to make this jump, you just tell us, we'll transfer you out, no questions asked, but if you go up and don't make that jump, you will go to prison. Because if you freeze in the door, it freezes, you can't get the stick out, you know, all the rest of the guys. And no matter what you do to that guy, you can't get him loose." So what they did, it came around to the time that we was ready to go. We packed our equipment bundles, and I was a light machine gunner in Normandy. I fired the .30 caliber light machine gun, and we had an equipment bundle under the planes and things. But anyway, they moved us from Camp McCall to Camp Shanks, New York. There we were told that we were going to Europe, not the Pacific. So on December the 23rd, 1943, we boarded the USS James Parker, which was the flagship of the largest convoy that went across the ocean at that time, knowing that the German Wolfpack, the German submarines were all over the place. They sank over 4,000 of our vessels easily. Well, there's 4,000 paratroopers on this one ship, and they were the flagship. We started across the ocean. It took us 11 days to get across. We landed in Belfast, Ireland. From Belfast, Ireland, we went to a place called Camp Cremore, but we couldn't train too good because it would be dark at 10 and then stay daylight till about 1 or 2. And so we couldn't really train right. So we moved us then to Wilton Park in Nottingham, England, right in the middle of Sherwood Forest. There they told us we're going to Normandy. So they took us to a place called Langley and Folkingham Air Force Base, fenced us in, and nobody could get out, nobody could get out. There we studied sand tables and got all ready to go, going into Normandy. Well, as it worked out,
By the way, you don't need to hold that up.
oh, is that right?
No, you can just
Oh,
put it
okay,
there.
sorry
There you
about that. In any case, when we got into that base, we was told to put all our equipment on. Now, being a demolition man, I had 2 landmines, not primed. I had 6 half-pound blocks of TNT, Primacord. I had a composition C2 plastic explosives. I had 4 hand grenades. I had 3 bandoliers of ammo. I had a gamma grenade and stuff like that. And I figured if I ever get hit with flak, I'd still be going up, you know. But in any case, we got all dressed on the night of June the 4th. We're laying there on the bunk. We woke up the next morning, we were still there. So the weather was so bad, so we didn't get a go. So the next day, we continued our training and stuff, and that night they had us dressed again. And about 9:30, the phone rang in the hangar and said it's on. Now, I wrote a book, and you can see the picture on the front of it. I weighed around 325 pounds with all my equipment, and you could barely get on a plane. But about 10 o'clock, between 10 and 10:15, we boarded the planes. And before we left, the USO had given us coffee and donuts, and I don't drink much coffee, but I ate plenty of donuts, and being an old farm kid. But anyway, we started out across the channel, and I'm going along, and I thought, what am I doing here? You know, I'm 19 years old, and I'm going into a country to kill people and jump behind these German lines. We jumped behind Utah Beach about 20 miles or so. But anyway, as we're flying across the channel, I got motion sickness, naturally. And I stood up, went up, and I hooked up my static line. I hooked up to the static line and went up, and I stood in the door. And I could look down, and it was kind of foggy and then clear, foggy and clear. I could look down, see all these thousands of ships crossing that channel heading for Normandy. Unbelievable. Now, I stood there all the time that we were going across the channel till we went over Jersey, Guernsey Island, and the Germans were in control of that. Up come the anti-aircraft fire, and I can't explain it. It looked like you could walk down on it. They were so bad. It shot down some of our planes, and our planes separated and moved around. And we got over the islands, turned across the Cherbourg Peninsula, and the paratroopers were scattered all over the peninsula. Even the Pathfinders were lost. Now, I was in this plane, and they turned the light on, and I was the second man, and they said go, and we went. And I went out, we were at about 450 to 500 feet. And I could look down, and they had flooded the Mediterranean River for miles. And there's all that water. And I know what I weighed, and I didn't want to land in the water. So I took my risers, and I pulled on them, was pulling on them. I'm going backwards, and bam, I landed in a tree in a little churchyard, St. Clair. Saved my life. Because I went back in 2011, the little lady that lived near there said the Germans were in her yard, they were bivouacking in her yard and house, and if I'd have landed another 50 yards, I'd landed right into them. But anyway, I landed in this tree, and I come down through the tree, and I'm about 8 to 10 feet above the ground, and I couldn't get unbuckled, and I took my trench knife and unhooked them, cut them, and dropped to the ground, run over to the hedgerow, and they had issued us a clicker. And I didn't bring it today, but I got one. And go. That's one. And if it was answered twice, supposed to be a friend. Can you imagine sitting out there in the dark and all surrounded by Germans going, "Here I am." I threw my clicker away. John Wayne in the movie Longest Day said, hanging on to that clicker could save your life. And he didn't say it could also get you killed, you know. So I threw that clicker into the hedgerow, and actually it did. It saved my life many a time. I wouldn't sit up there in the dark clicking this thing, because I interviewed a German officer a few years ago. And he said he didn't think the American intelligence were too sharp to have their men sitting out there in the dark going, wouldn't you be suspicious to hear that clicking and going on? What's going on? But anyway, those are just some of the stories. I won't go through all the stuff, but the day I will always remember in Normandy was July the 4th, 1944. I was given orders to take my men into Hill 95 and attack this hill, because we wanted to take the hill that overlooked the road going to St. Lo.
Don, before you get to that, because
Yep.
I've heard that yesterday on the radio, we're going to get to that story. But let's tell everyone that first night you were alone, who did you marry up with? What kind of group? And then for the next 10 days, what did you do?
Yeah,
before?
when I jumped that night, the first people I run into, bless their heart, was 6 guys from the 101st Airborne, and they were 16 or 17 miles from where they were supposed to be. They were supposed to be down around Carentan. I run into some British paratroopers, and they were supposed to be down around Caen. That's how mixed up we were. So it was 10 days before I got back to my unit. I fought with these 6 airborne guys. Every once in a while, we'd pick up a straggler or so, and we wound up with about 20 people. And, I could go on with story after story. But anyway, the 101st guys, finally, they went their way after the 10th day, and I found my company, H Company 508, on the 10th day. Now, all this time, we were given direct orders to take no prisoners for 10 days. And that was from General Gavin, our assistant division commander. And we had, when they got back to this company that day, and we're going down through this orchard, we're having a big firefight going down through there, and I'm a machine gunner. And I finally dug in my machine gun, and we fought there for about an hour, and all at once it got real quiet. And out in front of my machine gun, a medic got up, a German medic, and picked up a wounded German, put him on his shoulder, started walking away from me. And all I had done was just pull the trigger, could have killed him. And I yelled at my guys to hold their fire. He walked on down the field over a stone wall into this little chateau. Ladies and gentlemen, about 10 or 15 minutes later, we heard a noise, and 61 German veterans came up that road, surrendered to me, to my group. And if I'd have killed that medic, of course, he wouldn't have done that, you know. Anyway.
So you did fight for about a month in Normandy, and at the very end, you had this very chilling experience with your squad. Talk about July 4th.
On July the 4th, well, when we went into this field on July the 4th, we got in about 20 yards into the field and realized it was mined. There was a Hitler Youth division sitting on the top of the hill. And I've been back to this place, but there they were, and they opened up on us. 508 had the frontal attack, the 505 was here, the 325 of the gliders were here, and the 507 was on the other end, and we were trying to get this hill. Well, in my squad, Deloach, Blair, Tenner, Vachon, Medford, and I'm in the frontal attack with them. It killed these guys. How in the world did I ever get through there? I'll never know why I didn't get shot that day either. But when I realized where we were, instead of running back, I run over into a hedgerow, and I could look up and see this machine gun firing, and I had never fired my weapon. Now, in the M1 Garand that I had, you could put 1 in the chamber, 8 in the clip, and I thought, well, I'm never going to get out of here. There laid the guys all around. And I fired into that machine gun nest all my rounds. It stopped firing, and it was awesome. There was no more firing. You couldn't hear any firing anywhere. There's no wind, there's no birds, and I'm laying there scared to death because I figured they'd be shooting back at me. And I know I knocked out that machine gun nest because we went on all of our groups together went on. We took the hill on 95, but I'll have to remember that I lost 7 men out of my squad that day, and I blamed myself for it. How could I lose that many men and not get killed yourself? So I went on from there. We went on to like Le Depuis, Bellefontaine, St. Vith, not St. Vith, but Picqueville, Preto, and we fought until the 13th of July. I've had a lot of people say, how many battles were you in? I said, well, you know, when you're a paratrooper, you're in a battle every day. You're behind the German lines surrounded by thousands of German, and they knew we were coming too because they was on paratroop maneuvers. But I got through that, and on the 13th of July, it's the only time I rode in the vehicle. They took us back to Utah Beach, put us on a LSD, and they took it to Portsmouth in England, back to our base camp in Nottingham. And
Thank you, Don. That's a great, great story. And I'd love to talk about Operation Market Garden and the Battle of the Bulge, but we're out of time, unfortunately.
no problem.
We're going to move to the other side of the world, Carl. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your growing up, how you enlisted, and then your wartime experience.
First of all, I'd like to thank every one of you brothers with the military hats on and those who don't have one on. It's a blessing to be brotherhood with you. And thanks to all the guest speakers we've had here today. It's a very touching situation, and especially with Don's story, what he's seen and been through. And one thing about, I've mentioned a couple of times, if I never get to heaven, I've had a little experience of what it is of this building and being here and what people have done to get it accomplished. I guess you could say I'm a damn Yankee. I was raised in Webster, Mass, in a little town. There was a lake called Lake Chagog, Man Chagog, Shabunga Munga Gunga Mog. You fish on your side, I fish on mine, and nobody fish in the middle. It was the Nipmuc Indians. And there were 6 points of the lake where they had beaches, and we used to walk there barefoot and swim and enjoy it. And I used to be fascinated when I see automobiles with Ohio license plates. But anyway, I loved life when I was young, and I had a newspaper called the Webster Times, and President Roosevelt started the WPA and the NRA, the three C's, I should say, and I remember that times were hard, and I had a paper called the Webster Times. When I was 14, I got a job selling. Every time I'd ask somebody, I say, "Times, mister?" He'd say, "Hard times, buddy." So my brother went in the Marine Corps in 1939. Incidentally, he was on Iwo Jima. He had 310 men and 50 survived. He died 2 or 3 years ago. And so I had a friend that was an officer in the 3 Cs. So I asked him.
Civilian Conservation Corps, you're talking about.
Yeah, Civilian Conservation. I asked him if he could get me in, so I was in the 3 Cs. And a sandbank with a pick and shovel, and a straw box down below, make sure we get the stuff moving. And took over a lot of areas, and 3 Cs was pretty popular, and every state in the Union. But it was quite an experience, and I was a Boy Scout, and taking tests for the first class scout. The doctor put me through all kind of bandages and splints and everything, and when I was one time, we'd ride these oval army trucks with a canvas on top, and they distracted me and was talking to me, and one of them stuck a match in my shoe and lit it. And I swung my fist back and they held it, because I don't think that guy would have lived if I'd hit him. That's the most painful experience you can ever have a hot match in your, touching your lid of your shoe. So anyway, I thought, well, after that experience, maybe I can get a job in a sick bay with my experience with the Scouts. So I worked in a sick bay for a while, and they started training wooden guns, and I said, heck, I might as well go where the real ones are. So I hitched up from Webster to Worcester, Mass, and took the test, and Mom was worried about me, fibbing about my age being 16. So I hitchhiked back up, and the chief says, "What's your age in the C's?" I said, 17. He says, "Well, be here Monday morning." And I was sworn in Springfield, Mass., and went to Newport, Rhode Island for 6 weeks of boot camp. And one day it was raining, we couldn't drill, and Chief Petty Officer took us inside, and he said, "Just remember, respect women." It could be somebody's grandmother, mother, wife, sweetheart, or girlfriend, and that stuck with me. So after my training in boot camp, I was sent to Floyd Bennett Field in Brooklyn, the civilian air base, and no mess halls, no barracks. And I would get to stand guard duty under a hangar in the cold, freezing weather in Brooklyn in the wintertime. And they had B-25s in this hangar. And I had to stand guard duty at night, and have a military, most of you know, you have a password, and if you don't know the password, it's too bad, because the trigger might get you. But anyway, they sent me to a carpenter shop, and me in the Navy being stuck in a carpenter shop with two chief petty officers, that wasn't exactly my thought of what I'd like to be in the military. So I talked with the people in the office, and they got me in the sick bay, where all the experience I had with the bandages and splints, and I'd stand guard duty for fellas who were married, because there wasn't much liberty out there and what area we were in. So that experience was something. Then I was sent to Hospital Corps School in Portsmouth, Virginia, and I graduated from there. They sent me to Cherry Point with the 2nd Marine Air Wing, and we worked around bases there. And finally we were left there and went to California and loaded on an APA, troops and planes, all our equipment, and we stopped at Ruin the Moors. One building was there, we slept in it overnight. Then we stopped at Saipan, and on our way up, then we head up to Okinawa.
And an APA was an assault amphibious ship, right?
1,000 ships out in the bay, and at nighttime they'd be hauling, make smoke, gunfire, and the stars were blocked out by the traces. They were so thick, and for some reason I said, "I want off of this." I don't know who heard me, but next morning I went down to Higgins Neck up on Okinawa with 8 Marines and a major. At nighttime they stick me on guard duty on a Japanese Tony fighter with a camouflage net. When that wind blew them tassels, boy, I whip around ready to pull that trigger. So that was an experience. Another time was in an Army tub with they had 90 millimeter, they tested every day at noontime. And that night it went click. And Sally Bomber went overhead and crashed on the runway. And I could have hit it with the butt of my rifle. But I got down out there, and there was 6 Marines who went in that plane. It was full of sake beer bottles, and 6 did DOP, Japanese outside. And one Marine took his knife, cut his ear off for souvenir. Another one kicked his gold fillings out. And I thought, well, that's kind of sad, but I understood that the Japanese used to take some of our troops and put tassels of leather on their toes and tie them hands in the back of them. When the sun-dried that the leather out, they really suffered. So I guess it worked both ways. Yeah. And then there was front lines with the 2nd and 6th Division Cemetery. And once a week they bring a truckload of deceased Marines back, and the Seabees would dig a trench and line them up in it. And General Buckner was killed up there in the southern tip of Okinawa. And Ernie Pyle was on Hiroshima, where he got wiped out. But
Lieutenant General Simone Bolivar Buckner, the highest ranking officer in the U.S. Army killed in World War II, was
Ernie
killed
Pyle
on
was
Okinawa.
a GI favorite in the European newspaper, man. Yeah.
Ernie Pyle.
Yeah.
Yep.
So from that day forth, when I seen those men buried there, I made a promise that whenever old glory's torn, tattered, and faded, I knock on doors. I had a granddaughter in the Air Force, And she bought me 12 flags one year and 10 the next. I make sure she's taken down. And after the Okinawa invasion, we were sent to Yokosuka, and they had a hill. It was airplanes in the 60 degrees, 360, and they put them in there, and there was a door in the front with trees in front of it. But we used that for our sick bay. And then I had enough points to get out when I came to that. So I had an allotment out to my mother, so I could load it on ship, went to San Francisco, and then on a train to Boston, Massachusetts. And first job I had there, wasn't very happy, was in a rendering works, cutting off legs and stuff of deceased animals. So this ain't for me. So then I got a job in Cranston Print Work. They made bathing suits for materials and pleating cloth and the material. I still wasn't happy with that. So I said, I can do better back in the Navy as a corpsman, so I signed up and went back in. And I was transferred to the receiving station in Brooklyn. And I saw this young lady go by. And I don't know if I got someplace in there. I don't know what to do with it. Anyway, she was a Navy wave. And I said, I ain't letting her get away. And I asked her to marry me in 2 weeks. We lived in New Albany on Beecham Road. In them days, it was, now it's the Hamilton, but my grandmother had a farm up outside of Key, New Hampshire. It was called Started, and it had a 3/10 of a lane up there. And we'd go up there and pick blueberries and put them in a crate and take them down and sell them. She made muffins, pies, and everything. And so I looked at 50-mile radius and found this farm, and we bought this farm. My children were raised, and 8 girls and 3 boys, and it was a wonderful experience. And they all had calves and 4-H sheep to be in the fair. And one time I get to the point, there was 11 children. She told me to take a hike, so I hiked the Appalachian Trail. Actually, the last 1,000 miles from Springer Mountain to Harper's Ferry, it was 10.5 weeks. And I went out a week before 4th of July when I was 71 years old.
Wow.
And I rode coast to coast from California.
Did more hiking at
rode
71 than you did in the military.
Yeah, I rode coast to coast in '95 with 28 riders from Escondido to St. Thomas, Georgia in 5.5 weeks in the 70s.
Yeah.
So God's been good to me.
Yes, he has. Well, thank you for sharing that, Carl. We're going to...
With my buddy and I, we was on Yukon. We said, let's go up to the front lines. So we went up there, and we had a M1 and a 45 rifle on us, and Lord knows what could happen. But we got up there, and this lieutenant busted us. He says, what are you doing up here? I said, we come up here and look for some souvenirs. And he says, get back where you come from. If I catch you here again, I'll keep you here. And thanks to all your people for your patience.
Well, we're going to move back to the European theater. Jack, you served in the Coast Guard on a couple of ships. Why don't you talk about how you came to enlist and your experience in the war?
Oh, in 1942, I'm one of the sport-ass boys, you know, I think I knew everything about the world and all that was going on. And my dad had a little farm up there, so I helped on the farm. I drove a milk truck for Walter Farber. I tried to go to school, and 5 nights a week I worked for the government depot. So when I was working for the government depot, that's how I come across Bill Stallings and another guy there, and we decided, this is kind of rough, man. We don't get no time to see no girlfriends or nothing. So we decided we'd go into the recruiting station at 3rd Street and Summit, and let's see, right downtown Columbus to see about going in the Navy. Well, we went down there, and the guy said, "How old are you?" And we said, 17. He said, "You got to have both parents' signature." Well, I knew that was impossible to get my dad's signature. So going down the hallway, these guys looked like the Navy too. Here's the Coast Guard. So we talked to them guy, and the guy said, "Yeah, you need one signature." So we said, "Well, we'll try that." So anyway, they give us this paper to get filled out, and I had to check and see if I get a birth certificate. Well, I found out I had a birth certificate at home. So about 2 weeks later, I took the paper back in, and the guy said, a week from next Thursday, you be up here because you're going to be on your way to Manhattan Beach, New York. Well, that started out. That's where I ended up going to boot camp. So after boot camp there, about 6 weeks, I got to come home for 2 days to see my parents. So I come home, and then 2 days went by pretty fast. So I've got it back up here at the station there in Manhattan Beach, New York, and they said, well, Bill Cunningham, he's going to leave and go someplace tomorrow, and you're supposed to go tomorrow night afternoon, maybe aboard ship. And I said, good. So anyway, come about, Bill, he went to New Orleans, and then the next day, they told me, they said, Waltz, come on, we've got a guy coming here with a Jeep to pick you up. I want to have all your gear, everything you own with you, because you'll be coming back here for a while. So I went aboard the USS John W.P. Richardson, APM 182, which was a nice big ship. He could carry 10,000 troops. So anyway, I went aboard the ship, and the next morning I gets up, and I said, God, ain't nothing but water. We're way out in the ocean. I thought, that one sailor, he said, let me tell you something, buddy, you're going to sink in this shit here for about 5, 6 days. That's all you're going to see is water. So he was right. So I got, in my first trip, I finally got a call to come over to the PA system. Said, if everybody look at it 1,000 degrees to your left, on the port side, you'll see a Rock of Gibraltar. Well, I didn't know what the Rock of Gibraltar was, but I found out what it was. It was something really nice to see. So it took us 4 more days. We went to Naples, Italy. And the ship was so big, we couldn't get into the pier because the Germans had already bombed the hell out of the pier and tore everything up, and the ships were sunk in there. So we had to sail to about 5 miles out, and they brought them LSTs, LCIs, and them out to pick up these military guys. So about 2 days later, I woke up in the morning, and we're back out in the ocean again. So we're on our way back home. So my next trip was Leghorn, Italy. Then my next trip was Le Havre, France. Then finally, I had the privilege of going through the Suez Canal, and I got to go down, go across the equator, and that's what them guys really put it to me because I've never been initiated like that before. But I'll tell you one thing: when you go across the equator, by God, you get initiated. I'll never forget that time. But I'll say one: the Lord's been good to me. One nice thing about it, I've had some nice friends in the military, nice friends in the American Nation, and nice people in this great United States of America. And I thank you.
Well, thanks for that, Jack. Don, we're going to go back to you because you haven't finished talking about your wartime experience. You got back to England and you had 2 more battles to fight. What was that like dropping into combat again after knowing what it was like the first time around?
Before I go any further, I want to let everybody know what an honor it is and how proud I am to be able to see there's no finer people in the world that's gathered in this hallway right here tonight. Amen. God bless you all for being here. I'm really impressed as an old veteran. We still got a lot of good people in this country. And we got to keep our style of living and things. But anyway, after we got back to England, we began to get replacements. And I'll never forget when I first walked in my tent, and I didn't tell the story, and I probably shouldn't. The night that I jumped into Normandy, I sat there, nobody. Planes are going over. We're supposed to follow the route of the planes. So I waited there about a half an hour. I started down the hedgerow, and I come to a lane that had stone walls on each side, and I could hear the fighting going on, and I thought, well, I'm going up that lane. So I started up the lane and I heard somebody coming. Now, what you don't do is jump over a stone wall in the middle of the night unless you know what's on the other side. Well, I bailed over that stone wall, slid down this bank through the big, freshest cow pile you ever saw. I had it all over, and I was really giving myself wet fur, and there was about a platoon-sized group of Germans walk by. I could hear them. I could speak a little bit of German. I could hear them, and they were walked by, and they were heading back to that bivouac area from near that church. Well, can you imagine being in there? Now think of this, 37 days, no shower, no hot food except what you can make for yourself. And boy, I was a scrounger, and I could make me some food. But anyway, the guys would say, we'd be eating K rations or something, they'd say, get over there, Sarge. I said, that's all right, I get in here where the cows are, I know the Germans won't be able to find me, you know. Anyhow, that was quite a unique experience. When we got back into England, they gave us about a 5-day pass. We began to get replacements, and I come into my squad tent that night when I come back. There sat a guy on a bunk across from me, young guy sitting there, never said a word, and I had to be a mess. You can imagine 37 days wearing the same uniform that you had on when you jumped and all going through all that stuff. And finally I said, I looked at him, I said, I know you from someplace. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, where are you from? He said, Newark, Ohio. And I live in Johnstown, okay, 18 miles. Well, what he didn't know, what I used to do is, I had connection with the superintendent. He'd run me down to the sporting goods store to pick up stuff, and that's where I met Bill Tracy. And he and I became buddies all the time. And in fact, he got hit the same day in Holland that I got wounded. But anyhow, when we got ready to go on September the 17th, 1944, it was a Sunday, sun was shining, it was in the afternoon, and we took off for Holland, the largest airborne invasion in history until the drop across the Rhine where the 507 jumped. As we're going in, I automatically just got up again and up and hooked up and stood and looking at the door, and we're flying about 450, 500 feet. You can see these people waving their flags and their orange lanyards and stuff and waving at you and stuff like that. And I kept thinking to myself, what are we getting into? You know, what can we expect in there? Now, I was in the only airplane in the 441 transport group that got shot down. There were 17, including Father Kenny, was in the plane. Everybody got out of the plane real as quick as we could, except the crew sergeant. He jumped with a flak suit over his parachute. He got killed. The plane crashed down in Weiler. Now, they had plowed up all the fields, so when the gliders come in, they hit that plowed field, and they were all messed up. Now, our job was to make the landing safe for the gliders. So when, that was on the 17th, and we fought through the 18th and the 19th and the 20th and the 21st and the 22nd. And they had a place up there called the Groot Hotel in Bergendal. And when we took that place over, it was a division headquarters for the Germans. And when we drove them out of there, and it's the truth, the coffee was still warm on the table where they had been eaten. Now, we drove them out of there down into Persinger, and it was in the Den Hevel Woods that this Jewish family had hid for 25 months in an attic of the home that belonged to the Janssens. Now, my patrol went down through there, and I've got posters that Matt Hall's drawn for me, but my patrol, we went down through there, and I was part of it. We liberated that Jewish family from that attic after 25 months. Yet we didn't know they were in that until, for years I wrote to Edith in Israel for 20 years till she passed away, and she was telling about, they could hear him talking about calling for Sergeant Jake, hey Sergeant Jake. So Bert was 10 years old, And Rosa was the youngest, I think. Now, she was in the window of this house saying, "Save our souls, save our souls." Well, we went on, but the people reserved behind me got them out, took them up in a safe haven around Bergendal. Now, Bert told me that Rosa had said that she'd wish that a bomb had fallen on her and killed her. She was so depressed. On October the 2nd, 1944, she was crossing an intersection up in Bergendal. Messerschmitt 109 flew over, dropped a fragmentation bomb, and it killed her. And I just talked to Bert, the boy, this morning. He called me, and I won't carry on the conversation, but anyhow, when I withdrew my men back up to the top of the hill, and we dug in some what we call slit trenches where you could get in. While we were sitting there eating K rations, we heard this whoom in the distance, and it was a .385 German railroad gun, and they'd shoot about 4 or 5 rounds, pull back in a tunnel. And I yelled, "Incoming." I run to get my, went to get into my trench. John Giacomelli out of my squad jumped into my trench thing. I jumped in on top of him, and when that thing exploded, it killed him underneath me. Now, that was it was hard for me to believe. I got wounded pretty bad. In fact, I still carry shrapnel in my head and stuff from that, but it didn't kill me, but it killed John. And they took me to this field hospital, and I remember these things, thank God. The doctor and the nurse operated on me and took the metal out of my face, and I was all messed up. Took me out, put me in this tent. A Messerschmitt 109 flew over and strafed the hospital and killed the doctor and nurse who had just operated on me about 10 or 15 minutes before. Well, from there I was shipped back to England. Went to Oxford and to Coventry and to the different hospitals and things, and until December the 15th, 1944, I went back to my unit, and they wanted to transfer me out. And I said, well, no way. Now, back then, if you had 85 points, you could come home. I had 92. And I said, I want to go back to my outfit in Reims, France. And they let me go back to them. I got in there on the 15th. On the night of the 16th, the Germans broke through into the Battle of the Bulge. On the night of December the 16th, 1944. We had to scram. We were in this hallway watching a movie, and the lights come on and said, everybody back to your barracks, and blah, blah. So we went back, and we had to finish cleaning our equipment, and said we're getting ready to load up. And we loaded up on these big cattle trucks and took off for Werbermont into Belgium. In a large convoy. And we had, the 101st was in a place called Swipes, I hope I'm pronouncing it right. And they came in behind a convoy, behind the 82nd Airborne. And as we were going along, a Panzer division cut the convoy in two. And I know that the 101st was assigned they had to be assigned to Bastogne, so they circled, went into Bastogne. We went on to Werbermont, and after we got in there, we were fighting an hour or so after we got there. Now, we were trying to keep everybody away from Bastogne because of the crossroads there. We're headed to Antwerp, where the 150,000 German prisoners were held in a perimeter as prisoners. The Germans were trying to break through to get up there and relieve them, and if they had of it, it could have been a really lot of different problem. But anyway, I'm going to jump ahead of here a little bit. I wanted to just tell you a little story about my faith in God and what He done for me. On January the 30th, 1945, 23 below zero, snow was about 3 foot on the ground, and we just had a firefight, and I pulled my men back into some shrub, and a sniper killed 2 of my men. And I was so upset with that, I said, I'm not going to make it out of here. I'm going out and get that sniper. And I'll never forget it. Took Charlie White, he says, He said, "So we can't do that, Sergeant." I said, "I'm a staff sergeant, you're a private, you're going with me." So we're going out through the snow, and I'm walking through the snow, and all at once, ladies and gentlemen, I froze in my track. Had a shiver went up and down my back, and I thought, holy smoke, what's going on? So I looked around very slowly, and no farther from here, say they to the windows, lay that sniper pointing his Mauser rifle at me, and all he had to done was pull the trigger, he could have killed me. So very slowly, we were taught to never panic. I mean, follow your orders. So very slowly I went, Waffendiddling. This means throw down your weapons, put up your hands, and 2 snipers jumped up in snow capes. I'll think of that for a minute. Why he had just killed 2 of my men, why he didn't shoot me. So I just told him, "Come see how I'm gonna get him over there." We took him back to the battalion CP and turned him over to him. And I went back and dug my hole. We were not allowed to stay in a house or in a building or in a village. I dug my hole in the ground. And that morning, a runner came down to the sergeant, "You wanted up a battalion CP. Mendez wants to see you." I go up there and he called me Sergeant Jake. He said, "I want you to take your squad and go down through this lane and knock out that 88 that's sitting down in there, because we got to go through there, and it's got infantrymen around it." I said, "Sir, I only got 6 men left." He said, "But you got to go." Well, that morning that I woke up in that foxhole, before I got up there, I woke up and I was shaking all over like this. I don't think it was because I was scared. I just knew something was going to happen to me that day. So I'm going along, and one thing I'm going to tell you right now, I know there's non-coms, there's officers and everything here. I would never let any of my men go ahead of me. I was their leader. They followed me. And I'm walking along this bank, and a sniper shot me through the chest. Went in here, went out behind my shoulder blade, knocked me off the bank. I tried to crawl up to this tree, and I got up there, and he knocked the bark off above my head a couple times, and I passed out. Now, when I came to, they had carried me back to the field hospital, and they bandaged me up and put me on this meat wagon heading for Liège to the division hospital. And as we're going along, ladies and gentlemen, there's 2 wounded German, another GI, myself and the driver, and I was behind the driver. My stretcher arms collapsed around me like this. Well, it didn't hurt because it was around midnight at night and the roads were rough. Didn't hurt me. We went along about 4 or 5 more minutes, and that ambulance rolled off the side of this mountain. It went side over side over side, not 2 or 3 times. I mean, it rolled down this mountainside, turned upside down in the river, and killed everybody in that ambulance but me. Now, why did my stretcher collapse? So you see, my faith in the guy that created me is, I thank him every night in my prayers for allowing me to come home. But anyway, I laid there till about 6:30 the next morning. Some GIs walking along the road to come down. They found me. It took them about 45 minutes to get me up the top of the hill, took me into the hospital. Got in there about 8:30, and I woke up the next day about 11 o'clock, and that was eventually my trip home. Now, I'm going to tell you, I came home, and I promised that I would do everything I could to be helpful to people, the handicapped, the senior citizens, the community, the schools, and that's what I spent my whole life doing. I've got a street named after me in Johnstown. I got a football field named after me. I coached. I developed a Little League program. I got a baseball field, and I didn't ask for none of that. And I'm going to I could go on and on, but I'm going to cut it off a little bit because I came home, 1946, I married my wife. We've been married 73 years coming up here on the 9th. I have 3 beautiful sons and a daughter, and no man could be more fortunate than what I am, because I have developed friendship with so many people around the world. Like being here today. I'm in awe of the people that's here. I didn't imagine we'd have this many people here. And I want to thank the people responsible for bringing us veterans up here, because they're great people. And I'm just proud to be one of them. And I'm telling you right now, I've had a lot of people say, you're a hero. A hero is a special event. They're laying buried over there in the foreign cemeteries. I'm a survivor, and I thank God every night in my prayers. I'm so proud to be here. Now, we got any more questions or not? I might blow up too much here, probably.
Give everyone a hand. We have time for one or two questions, provided they are questions. Oh, okay, go ahead.
This is another holiday. December 7th, 1941, I come out of a movie theater in Times Square, and the police cruisers are going like this. I said, what the heck's going on? I just come out of a movie. I went over to the car, and they said, you heard the Japs bombed Pearl Harbor? I said, I just come out of a movie. He said, get back to your base right away.
Are there any questions for any of the veterans? We can invent some. Yes.
My dad is Jack Walsh. I would like him to tell a little bit about when he was bringing prisoners back to America.
So what was the experience like bringing prisoners of war back to the United States?
Well, we was in Lahore, France. We picked up about 780 German prisoners. And you know, it's surprising. I had one sailor aboard the ship, he could speak German. And you know, these guys, they're from 14 years old to 75 years old. Now, they were German military personnel. Anyway, we pulled into Hoboken, New Jersey on a sighting, and they had a big coach up there, railroad coach, big enough to put these guys in. And I said, where are they going? They said, they're going down to Georgia. I said, for what? They're going down there and take care of the peanut farms because we need a lot of this peanuts to win this war. Now, that was funny to hear that, but that's where they're going. But, you know, you felt so sorry for these guys. I mean, and I'll tell you what, they thought our food aboard our ship was great. Sometimes we didn't think it's too good. Well, thank you.
So German prisoners of war were used all over the United States, mostly in agriculture. They were paid according to the Geneva Convention, and they were hardly guarded because there was no way for them to escape, no way to get back to Germany. Any other questions? Yes. Speak up if you can. I'll repeat the question.
And my question is, I'm just trying to wrap my head around what was going through your mind when you're having that leap of faith out of that plane, the aircraft fire. I've been to the beaches in Normandy, I've been there. But just what is going through your head, the aircraft fire, and then you have to jump out of there.
So, Don, the question's for you, and it's what is going through your mind as you are standing in the door, you see the anti-aircraft fire, and then you jump out and you descend?
They had a big deal about, you know, you heard the version Geronimo when you jump, and we were the 508 Red Devils. We were supposed to say Diablo. By the time you say that, your chute be open. That isn't what I said. I'll tell you, there's no feeling, I don't care what it is, of jumping out of a plane in the middle of the night into combat with a sky full of tracers and things coming up at you, and that feeling was, and being an old farm kid, well, it was like a miracle type thing, yeah. But no, I just went out and I said, all I can say, shoot, you gotta open.
Okay, time for one more in the back there.
My question is for Mr. Jigley also. So after that initial jump on D-Day, you got together with those 20 people. You're saying it was just 37 days of skirmish after skirmish after skirmish? My question was after that initial jump on D-Day for Mr. Jakeway also, you got together with those ragtag, six people from the 101st and whatever. You just had skirmish after skirmish for 37 days, working from town to town?
Well, for 10 days until you linked up with your unit.
Pardon? Yeah, it was 10 days.
So after you got on the ground, for those 10 days before you linked up with your company.
That's right.
What did you do with your kind of pickup team there?
Well, what we did, there was one second lieutenant from the 101st. He happened to be a great guy. I mean, he knew that we were in trouble. So he put us out on reconnaissance patrols to find out, where are we? What are we facing? Did we get it? And we'd send us out. I was the only 82nd Airborne guy there. I got to lead the patrols. So we were on combat patrols. We would go out on combat patrols purposely trying to find out where the enemy was. And I want to tell you, I was laying on this side of this bank, and this is when I had my folding stock carbine, and I was laying there looking over in this bank, and you could see the Germans coming across the field. And just as I got ready to shoot, a bullet hit between my head and my elbow from behind me. I bailed over that thing and into the ditch, and the Germans were still coming, and I'm shooting at this guy with this carbine, and the dirt's flying up halfway between me and him, and I said, I'm a better marksman than that, even though I didn't have my machine gun, but I looked over, and poor old Dick Owen had got hit right there in the head, and their lady's M1, and I picked it up. That M1 saved my life many, many, many times, and I got one hanging on my wall at home, and it works too.
Just in case.
Thank you.
So after those 10 days, you linked up with your unit. The 82nd Airborne fought as a division for the rest of its time in Normandy. So after these small groups got together, the division coalesced, and it had some very vicious fighting, but played a really key role in the battles for the Cotentin Peninsula. I think we have one more video to show. Is that true? And I think now is about time to do it. Before we thank our panelists one final time, let me just say that I helped build at Ohio State World War II study abroad program. The first cohort went overseas in 2013. We've now had 7 cohorts of 20 students, and they go to all these same places learning about the history of World War II and memorializing it in their own way. They start in London, they go to Normandy, Paris, Krakow, and Berlin, learning about the invasion, the Holocaust, and what it takes to liberate a continent. So we thank our 3 panelists today and all they did back then on June 6th and in other theaters of operation in World War II. Thank you all for coming, and please join me in thanking our panelists one final time. Thank you, Don. Appreciate it. Thank you, Carl. Jack, thank you. And please take some time to go through the museum. It's wonderful.